The rain was coming down hard when Liam spotted the twisted metal by the roadside. At first, he thought it was just another abandoned car, but then a faint cry pierced through the storm. His heartbeat kicked into a frantic rhythm as he sprinted toward the wreck. The front of the black SUV was crumpled against a tree, its headlights flickering like dying stars. Inside, a young woman sat slumped over the steering wheel, her face pale and streaked with blood. Hey, can you hear me?" he shouted, fumbling with the jammed door, his hands trembling from cold and fear. When her eyelids fluttered open, those eyes, sharp green, filled with terror, locked onto his. That look would stay with him forever. Liam wasn't a man used to heroics. He was a single dad barely holding on, a man whose world revolved around a 7-year-old girl asleep back in their tiny apartment. He had left her wrapped in 2 blankets because the heater was broken again. The fridge at home was nearly empty, half a loaf of bread, 2 eggs, and a carton of milk with yesterday's date curling at the top. There was an eviction notice taped to the peeling doorframe, edges curling like a cruel grin. His shoes, soaked through now, had duct tape at the soles. None of that mattered in this moment. All he saw was her, barely conscious, breathing shallow. "Stay with me," he said, pulling at the door with all his strength until it gave way with a metallic screech. She whimpered as he slid his arms under her. The scent of expensive perfume clung to her hair, even through the sharp tang of blood and rain. She wasn't dressed for this kind of night-tight black jeans, a silk blouse under a leather jacket, and a pair of heels tossed somewhere under the seat. Her lips were trembling, and when she tried to speak, it came out like broken glass. "My phone, can't find." "Forget the phone," Liam said, lifting her into his arms. She was lighter than he expected, but his back screamed from the effort. He staggered toward his beat-up, old sedan parked on the shoulder, the engine barely holding together like the rest of his life. As he laid her in the back seat, she grabbed his wrist with surprising strength. "Please, don't leave me. I'm not going anywhere." His voice was low, steady, though his heart thundered. He started the car, praying it wouldn't stall, and turned toward the nearest hospital. The wipers struggled against the downpour, and Liam kept glancing in the rear-view mirror at the stranger sprawled across his back seat. She was beautiful, even in pain, high cheekbones, dark lashes heavy with rain. But her breath hitched shallow and uneven. He gripped the steering wheel tighter. He couldn't let her die. Halfway there, his phone buzzed on the passenger seat. A message from the babysitter. "Sorry, can't stay. Had to leave. Hope you're back soon." His throat tightened. Mia alone, in that cold apartment with the broken lock and flickering light. He pictured her sitting cross-legged on the worn carpet, hugging her threadbare teddy bear, waiting for him like she always did. For a split second, he thought about turning back. He had no family, no one to call, no money for emergencies, and yet, he looked at the woman again, her face slick with tears and rain, whispering something under her breath. He couldn't make out the words, but it sounded like a name. When they finally screeched into the hospital's emergency lane, Liam jumped out, yelling for help. Nurses swarmed her, lifting her onto a gurney. He stood there, drenched and shivering, until one of them asked, "Are you a relative?" "No," he said, his voice barely audible. "Just someone who found her." As the doors swung shut behind them, leaving him alone in the harsh white glow of the hospital entrance, Liam's phone buzzed again. Another message. "Mia's scared. Where are you?" His stomach dropped. He drove back fast, guilt clawing at his chest. The apartment was dark when he got there, except for the flickering bulb in the kitchen. Mia was curled up on the couch, cheeks damp, clutching that teddy bear like a lifeline. When she saw him, her tiny arms flew around his neck. "Daddy, you're late," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I know, baby. I'm sorry." He held her tight, feeling the weight of everything. Rent overdue, bills stacked on the counter, and now this night. He carried her to bed, kissed her forehead, and stayed there until her breathing softened. But even then, lying on the couch later, listening to the hum of that dying fridge. He couldn't shake the image of the woman's green eyes staring at him through the rain. And when his phone buzzed again, this time an unknown number flashing across the screen, his chest tightened. He hesitated, thumb hovering over the answer button. "Hello?" His voice cracked. "Is this Liam?" The voice was soft, melodic, and strangely steady. "Yes," he said slowly. "This is Ava." The woman from the car whispered, "I need to see you, please." And then the line went dead. Liam stared at the phone long after the call ended, the screen glowing like a secret in the darkness. Her voice lingered in his mind, soft, pleading, and laced with something he couldn't name. Mia stirred in her sleep, and he brushed a strand of hair from her forehead before slipping quietly out to the kitchen. The light above flickered again, casting long shadows on the chipped linoleum floor. Who was Ava, and why did she want to see him? He had no time for mysteries. Tomorrow, the landlord would come knocking for the overdue rent. He opened the fridge out of habit, knowing what he'd find: a shriveled apple, the 2 eggs, the sour milk. He sighed and closed it, pressing his palms against the cold metal like it could hold him together. By morning, his body ached from sleeping on the couch. He dropped me off at school with a kiss and the last crumpled dollar for lunch. She smiled anyway, clutching his hand a little too long. That smile was everything to him, his only reason to keep going when everything else was falling apart. On his way back, the phone rang again, same unknown number. He almost ignored it, then answered with a tight breath. "Liam." Her voice was stronger now, though still gentle. "It's Ava, from last night. Please, can we meet? I want to thank you." "You don't have to, please," she interrupted, and there was something in her tone that made refusal impossible. "Just come to the address I'll text you today." Minutes later, his phone buzzed. He read the message twice, thinking it had to be a mistake. The address was in a part of town he'd never even driven through, where the houses weren't just houses but mansions with iron gates and hedges sculpted like art. He almost turned around when he saw it, a sprawling estate set back behind a black wrought iron gate, glistening in the late morning sun. The driveway stretched like a private road, and at the end stood a house that looked like something out of a magazine: white stone, towering windows, balconies with flower boxes spilling color. Liam parked his dented sedan at the curb, feeling like an intruder in another world. His hands were rough and calloused, his jacket frayed at the cuffs. He caught his reflection in the rearview mirror, unshaven, hair still damp from his rushed shower, and almost drove away. But then the gate opened with a smooth, silent swing. Someone was expecting him. Ava met him at the door. She wasn't the broken figure from last night anymore. She stood tall, elegant, in a deep red dress that hugged her like confidence itself, her dark hair cascading over one shoulder. There was a small bandage on her forehead, but even that looked delicate against her flawless skin. Her green eyes softened when they met his. "Liam," she said, stepping closer, her voice like warm silk. "You came? Yeah," he stammered, glancing around at the marble floors and chandeliers glittering overhead. "I just wanted to make sure you were okay." "I am," she said, smiling faintly, "because of you." She reached out, her fingers brushing his hand, and for a moment he forgot how empty his wall it was, or how heavy life had been. "Look, you don't owe me anything," he murmured, pulling back slightly. "Anyone would have done the same." "No," she said firmly, her gaze holding his. "Not anyone. Most people would have driven past in that storm. You didn't. You saved my life." Before he could reply, a man in a tailored suit appeared from a side hallway, carrying a tablet. He spoke to Ava in a low tone, then nodded and left. Liam felt smaller by the second, like he was shrinking in her world of polished surfaces and quiet wealth. "I know you're a single father," Ava said suddenly, her voice softening again. "You left your little girl to help a stranger." He froze. "How do you? I asked the hospital about you," she admitted, her smile tinged with guilt. "I needed to know who risked everything for me." She took a step closer. Liam, let me help you. His chest tightened. No, I can't take your money. This isn't charity, she said, her tone gentle but unyielding. It's gratitude, and maybe fate. He almost laughed at that. Fate didn't visit people like him. But then she led him into a sunlit room where 2 checks lay on a sleek glass table. One bore his name, enough to clear the debt that had crushed him for months. The other was for Mia's future, college, safety, hope. He stared, words tangled in his throat. I can't? Yes, you can. Ava whispered, her eyes shimmering now. Because when you pulled me out of that car, you gave me back my life. Let me give yours a chance. For the first time in years, Liam felt something rise in his chest that wasn't fear. It was relief, pure and light, almost like joy. He thought of Mia's smile, of a fridge that wasn't empty, of nights without dread clawing at his ribs. His voice cracked when he finally said, "Thank you." Ava reached out, her hand warm over his. "One act of kindness can change everything," she said softly. "You reminded me of that. Don't ever forget it." As he walked out through the golden afternoon light, checks in his pocket and hope blooming where despair had lived too long, Liam knew she was right. Sometimes the smallest choice, a decision to stop, to care, could reroute an entire life.